YOLO composing gloves here, and today we will be taking a look into the custom filter shapes inside of Harmor. They allow you to make some resonancy vowel type sounds similar to, well, just like this one. Yeah, so we got these nice, that kind of a thing over here. And if we come in here and move like one thing over in the custom filter shape, we get totally different results than we can move this. That one doesn't play a bigger role. It's because of the frequencies that are in here. So we're going to talk about this. The documentation on this is very slim, and they use this thing called a shape to explain it, which is not really used anywhere else I've read. I've read a number of books on synthesis. So they have this concept of a shape to be applied to the filter, which affects your spectrum, which can be a lot to digest. So let's go ahead, clear our palette, and move forward in a very straightforward way. So I'll open up a default Harmor. So here's a default Harmor. And we are going to go to our filter right now, it's regular filter. We'll go to our custom shape 1. And you're presented with this shape, which you can alternatively get to by going to filter shape 1. It's right here. And right now, if we move our cutoff knob, it appears to have been broken. Doesn't work. It's because our cutoff knob will now be defined by a shape presented in this area. So if I put down points, I'm defining a shape. What does that mean? Well, that's a great question. First, we need to establish a couple just basic things. When the line is up, that means the volume's on. When the line is down, like so, that means it's off because it's filtering and it's affected by the shape. And if our shape is no shape, then there will be no volume. And if I move it around, you see there's no volume. So now let's talk about, what about a line like this? So we've just noticed that the top means volume, amplitude, and the bottom means no volume, no amplitude. So we need to figure out what's the min and max here. So when this knob is at the top, this is corresponding to this side of the graph. So we would expect to hear volume because right now we've said, hey, play volume here. And then we will scroll through down to this other point. While we're scrolling, the graph has no impact on the frequencies that are selected to be affected. That's affected by the frequency and the width. The graph, I guess the graph affects everything, but it's kind of a confusing thing. The graph affects all the frequencies, the entire spectrum, and the frequencies select which frequencies the graph can affect. This is why this is a confusing topic right here. But let me play it for you. As I move and select lower and lower frequencies, we're going to decrease in volume, and as a result, we'll get a low pass filter. You see, pretty straightforward. I've never really seen someone explain it like I'm trying to explain it to you, because most of the time they just tell you what the shape does and say it's a shape and they move on. Not the most clear though, because you would think that like, oh, you might misconceive this as being the low end and this being the high end, which is false, because if we flip it, now the only reason we get a high pass filter in this case is not because of this graph, because later on I'll show you. This determines the shape. So as we move along, when we're down here, we're at maximum volume. And when we're up here, we're at this side, so minimum volume. And we've lost our high frequencies here. You might be going like, what the heck? Why'd we lose our high frequencies? Well, you have to understand how the shape works. And I think the most easy shape to start with, honestly, is this one. Besides the on-off. That's the easiest. So this one I think is actually easier. It gives you the concept of the shape a little bit better. Now recall that a filter, when we sweep a filter, we're selecting our frequency cutoff point. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cut frequencies in one direction or another. That's just like the point where our cutoff takes place. And at this cutoff, a shape is applied. So it could be this sort of a shape. It could be this sort of a shape. And what do I mean by a shape is applied? So maybe my shape says frequencies on both sides of my cutoff point be removed. That's what this graph says. I could say frequencies only on this side of my cutoff point be removed, and they will be removed. So that's the frequency cutoff. Selects where our shape begins to affect the spectrum. The width knob controls it. It's kind of an interesting deal. The width knob controls the amount of frequencies that are chosen to be affected by our shape. So, okay, I'm just going to make the width knob small for now, and let's get a grip on the frequency knob first. So as you see, we're selecting frequencies, and it says at my cutoff point, wherever this cutoff point is, let there be frequencies in the shaded region. But in the unshaded region, which includes stuff that goes beyond here, because remember, this is 0. So anything below this is just, it's gone. It's removed. And so what it's saying is frequencies above my cutoff point over here, be gone. That's why there's no frequencies above where we select. Frequencies below. And then I've made my width really small. The width controls how much I'm allowed to affect it. How many frequencies are within the range that I'm saying be gone. So it's sort of like you could picture, I tried to reach to the screen to pull the envelope out of it. I don't know what I'm thinking. Anyways, you can picture it as stretching out the triangle or squishing it in. So we have this or we have this. You know, it's like that kind of a deal. That's what the width's doing, basically. I'm trying to think of ways to make this more intuitive. So that's what we have here. That's what the width does. The width has another role, though. We'll talk about that when we start doing multiple peaks. So now we sort of get this. So we get that this is a shape that's being imprinted on the spectrum. And so let's move on to back. Let's actually go back real quick to a specific shape. What the heck am I doing? Okay. So here we go. This is our shape. This is just a line. This resulted in just a low pass, or in this case, this is a high pass filter. And I keep getting these mixed up. Just a fresh reminder, when the knob's all the way turned up, it corresponds to being over here. And when the knob's all the way turned down, it corresponds to being over here. So as you see, our volume increased. And it can be kind of confusing. That's because we have a fair amount of volume here. It's because of our width. Our width's too big. Take the width out. There you go. That's kind of what we expect. But we notice that when our width is at its smallest, we would expect to be, at this point, which would be, at this point down here, which would be 0. But we still have frequencies. That's kind of weird. And that's because this width, although it is as small as it can go, it's not like infinitesimally small. And so as a result, we're looking at sort of like a portion of this shape. This shape right here, this little bit. We're not looking at this one point, like where the hand's dragging around. We're not looking at that one point. We're looking at this little region. And because of that, it's not completely removed. We can help it by defining 0 to occur earlier. So if we put 0 over here, it will look at this region and say, oh, all this region is 0, and it will get rid of our thing. Or in this case, we removed more. Wow, how far up do we have to do this? There it is. That far up. Let's see. Right there, you've still got a little smear of it. But now you can see it's looking at a region of our graph. And these values are really small. And those harmonics are also, those harmonics are also just really small. I mean, really, really soft as well. So, okay, we've got sort of the basics down now. Let's talk about some more interesting shapes. So what if I did something, so we know this says reject on both sides. But what if I did something like this? What does this say? This is sort of like, oh, okay. Well, we know that this is going to select frequencies, and it's going to say, let's just say we put it in the middle. Let's just pretend it's not moving. It's going to say, well, frequencies on the extreme lows and highs will still be removed according to our width knob. But we're going to have these 3 pockets that come in. So we've got a pocket here, which I'm assuming this is like at the cutoff. I could never, it says center right there. So that's got to be like the center at our cutoff point. And then on the other side. So we'd expect 2 like little pockets on the sides. And we pretty much get that. It's kind of hard to tell with not so dense a spectrum. Let's we can fix that by bringing our frequency and detune down. And you see that's a lot more clear. And all I did to do that was I basically just increased the number of frequencies there. Sound and synth basics if you want to know. But you see we have these 2 holes which correspond to these 2 unshaded regions, and then the ends are empty and we only have the shaded region. Now this is where the width thing comes into play. So let's move this down. So less frequencies down here, so it's not as clear a picture. Maybe we'll keep it up there. That's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the width. The width changes the number of frequencies that it looks at, but it does another function. It also will push these bands away because it's sort of like the stretching and squishing of our shape. So when our shape gets stretched and squished, these max points will also correspondingly, like if I had like a point here and then 2 points on the side, they go in and out like that. Let me see. Is that on the screen? Yeah, whatever. You know, they're coming in and out. So what we're going to get is something like this. Whoops, my bad. See how they split up? They're like, see ya. And that's because we're opening our width up that stretches our shape out. Yeah, I am cut off. What the heck? Go this way? This. I'm going to have to fix that later. Anyways, you can see it visually here. It's like sounds doing yoga, getting stretched out. So there we have it. That is the basics of this shape thing. And they allow you to create some really cool vowel sounds. Now there is another property that's pretty nifty. Let's do this. Let's say you want a really, really like ultra specific bandpass filter. You can accomplish it by changing the width to 0, which is as thin as you can go. And then you do this. So now you're saying just this little sliver. We can get more slivery. And so now it's just entertaining. If we put on some like verb, brought the decay up. This could be like an ambience in a track or something. Anyways, you get the idea. So that's fun. So let me show you a couple cool things you can do with the sound design of this. Of course, there's more advanced shapes, but I've given you the tools that you really need to understand what's happening. So let's go with one of these threesome shape kind of deals. And do the holes. And then I don't want the ends to be completely chopped off. We'll have something like this. And so, okay, there we have something like that. So I'm getting an interesting sound. Oh, the verb's up quite a bit. And it's always going to be more interesting if you distort stuff. I already like the spectrum we're working with. Let's use some log distortion. Now let's move the frequency around. And I'm not a total fan of the holes we're getting. Maybe not complete rejection. When we're aiming for rejection, sometimes total rejection creates unwanted, like the holes are too aggressive. So let's add some. So you can see already, I don't know if you've heard that track, Timmy Trumpet. I forgot who wrote it. It's like, hey, Timmy, play your trumpet loud. And then they play like a baritone. It's not even a trumpet. So I can't remember what instrument it was, but it wasn't a trumpet. But anyways, kind of sounds like that. It's just like that. We figured that sound out. That's how you make that sound. So, okay, let's add some resonance. So resonance, let's remove the, maybe move the offset down. So we can get resonance in there. It gets sort of more aggressive. We could bring the width up. And things of that nature. Pretty standard growl type stuff. Now, there's the interesting thing I was going to say earlier was we have blur, which changes the way our harmonics are introduced. So we could try fading the top end. It only really matters when we move the frequency cutoff in our case. But we can get more smoother smearing. So pretty interesting. I think we're going in kind of a cool direction. Something that's always cool is to see if we can create a stereo image of some sort. So I'm bringing the pitch down on the unison, introducing a delay. Maybe not that much of a... And these are all static moves right now. We could come in, let's steal the line from that one. Create a new pattern, paste it in. We'll drop it down here and turn this one off. And let's go ahead and automate the width and the frequency. And so the width, right, is going to select the frequency range, and the frequencies, the filter. So let's just create some interesting movement for the first bit. Maybe not that extreme. That's like too much. You noticed over here, I was a little conservative in the middle. I found that to be the sweet spot. Depends on the range and like how severe the processing you resorted to was. Let's try a fast sweep at the beginning. That's kind of cool. Let's leave that there. Let's try adding a resonance. Whoops, a resonance flare. Oh, we get an interesting. That's kind of cool. Let's try it with a square wave. I'm not digging it. We'd have to play lower for that. So now let's come in here. Let's try moving this over too. So now it's not quite centered. That'll see what that does. Now, these sorts of decisions on like which areas of the frequency are dependent on your initial spectrum, because that's going to determine the frequencies that get like boosted by your resonance or whatever. We have quite a bit of resonance. Maybe bring that down a bit. And because your initial spectrum will provide the frequencies that you select from for your filter, and then the shape will be the offset from that. So there's this like three-way partnership happening. You'll often find that like peaks on the outer edges don't do as much. And I mean, like in particular sounds, typically sounds of this kind, they don't do as much. It's often going to be on like the upper side, because this is going to be, right, if this is the cutoff frequency and our frequency value ever goes pretty low, there won't be frequencies underneath to cut anyways. So areas of this region up generally in sounds of this nature are going to be affected more. That's why it's really nice to know what this does instead of having like little one sentence explanations in the manual. Anyways, kind of an interesting deal. You're able to go wild with this. Trying to think if there's anything else that I found pretty useful for this. So the resonance thing's a big thing. Yeah, that's that. If you have any questions, let me know. If something wasn't as clear, you may also consider keyboard tracking. That's going to change where your filter's at, and this may make the filter in an area of resonance that's more relevant, right? Because if we're playing high frequencies and our frequency centers like offset in some ridiculous high area, that's going to be no good. So sometimes moving the keyboard tracking to better match your playing, like I think that's remarkably better than. Like that's all right. I feel like this just matches it better. We get some square wave action at the end on that one. That's courtesy of our distortion. So if you have any questions, let me know, subscribe, and have a blessed day.